Now that we've hit the Christmas break, we are at the official or unofficial halfway mark of the regular season for the Ontario Hockey League, except one team. The Kitchener Rangers are the only team that has reached 34 games so far, where the rest, they should hit the official halfway mark New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, somewhere around there. If you look at, Kitchener, they've played 34 games, but for the Barrie Colts, they've only played 29. So it's not really balanced at the moment, but you know what? We're on a break. Everyone can just enjoy some time with family and also contemplate what's going to happen going into the new year because we have the OHL trade deadline set for January 10th. So that's 3 weeks away. The general managers, they all have an idea of what their teams are right now and what they need, or maybe they're looking to the future. So we're going to go through the 20 teams in the Ontario Hockey League. We're going to go through the overall standings from 1st to 20th. And we'll also look at who the top 3 scorers are and discuss what teams may do in preparations of the OHL trade deadline. So with that in mind, let's start things off with the Kitchener Rangers, who are first overall with 50 points. They are having a remarkable run. Carson Rakoff and Hunter Brustevich, they're tied in points right now for Kitchener with 55. And then you have Matthew Sopp third with 53 points. And those 3 players right now lead the league in points. It's remarkable what the Kitchener Rangers are doing. They lead in almost all offensive categories. This is a team that many were picking to be a bubble team in the Western Conference playoff picture. Last year was supposed to be their year, but then they get a Hokus on the bench, and he's got them buying into the system. If you haven't seen the interview I did with Mike Farwell, the radio play-by-play voice for the Kitchener Rangers, we talk about the team and just what they're doing right now. It's just quite remarkable. The OHL trade deadline, I wouldn't be surprised if they maybe add some depth pieces. Don't expect them to go big on the trade front. I know there's some big names that are potentially available, but I don't think the Kitchener Rangers are going to go for the big fish. They have an open import slot. Maybe they go and target an import player, or they'll have an import player who they've drafted in the past take that position. Because remember, they traded Thomas Hamara to the Brantford Bulldogs earlier in the season. So the Kitchener Rangers looking pretty good and that number 1 spot. And then at number 2, it's the Sioux Greyhounds. They're 3 points back of Kitchener with 47. Jack Beck continues to lead the team in scoring with 41 points. And then you've got Marco Magnosa. He's second with 34 points. And then Artu Karki, Owen Allard, Bryce McConnell-Barker, they're all tied for third with 30 points. And for Artu Karki and Owen Allard, both of them at the World Juniors, Karki, he's been quite the player for the Greyhounds. He's tied for the lead in power play goals this season. Sault Ste. Marie, I know they missed the playoffs last year, but they are having a statement season leading that West Division. It's going to be quite the battle in the second half between them and the Saginaw Spirit. It doesn't sound like they're going to be coasting into the second half. Expect them to maybe make a couple of big pickups. Do they address their goaltending? I know Schenkel's done really well between the pipes, but we've seen it in the past where teams that want to have a deep run, they'll pick up another goaltender. So you have a solid 1-2 punch. But I don't think goaltending is the problem with the Sioux Greyhounds. Maybe they can add a defenseman. I don't know, but they're also really good on the offense. But the other thing is, you might also want to take away some of the options away from Saginaw because you know Saginaw is going to go all in. And for Sault Ste. Marie, they put in a bid. They wanted the Memorial Cup this year, but fell short against Saginaw. They have a chip on their shoulder. So the Greyhounds looking really good. Number 2 at the halfway point in the regular season. Speaking of Saginaw, they're third overall with 41 points. Zane Perek leads the team in points with 42. Then you have Hunter Haight. He's second with 38. And Matthias Sapovalev third with 36 points. Michael Misa is fourth in scoring, which is a little surprising. I kind of was expecting Misa to be one of the leaders in points this season, but he's still getting the job done. It's a loaded Saginaw Spirit team. Dave Drinkle, the general manager of the Spirit, has already said he's willing to make any trade to make this team better. They want to go into the Memorial Cup through the front door. They don't just want to be the hosts. And with that in mind, that's probably going to factor into some decisions in the Eastern Conference. And we'll talk about the East in a little bit. But for the Saginaw Spirit, I would not be surprised if they are in on some of the big names at the trade deadline. I'm not going to speculate on who those players are. There are a lot of rumors as to who they are, but we have to remember a lot of these guys are kids or young adults and probably don't want to hear their names broadcasted like the have all the speculation out there on the internet. So for Saginaw, they will probably be looking for big fish at the trade deadline, but it's just a loaded Western Conference right now. And we have another Western Conference team sitting fourth and that's the London Knights with 41 points. Denver Barkey first with 44 points. He has been solid for London. Easton Cowan, he is second with 39 points. Remember, he started the season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, so he had a bit of a delay to his season, but he's been getting the job done. And then Jacob Julian, third in points with 38. Julian, he's really picked up his game in these last few weeks. The London Knights, they have the depth. Defensively, they've struggled, although they do have some solid blue liners. You've got Sam Dickinson and Oliver Bonk, just to name two players, and there's also Isaiah George. So the London Knights, they are more than capable of going on a run. We saw them do it last year, and they're another team in the West that they're probably going to look to add and try and catch the Kitchener Rangers for top spot in the Midwest. So it's going to be a competitive run. And we still haven't seen an Eastern Conference team yet because number 5 overall right now, the Guelph Storm, quietly there at number 5. They have 40 points on the season. Jed Luchenko, first with 34 points. Braden Bowman, second with 33. And then Jake Carabella, third with 29 points. So that's the top 5 teams overall, all from the Western Conference. This trade deadline is going to be something else. I think for the Guelph Storm, they're being patient right now, waiting to find out what happens with Matthew Poitras. The Boston Bruins have loaned him to Team Canada at the World Juniors. Cam Allen was supposed to come back at the beginning of December. We still haven't heard when he could return to the lineup. And offense has been a struggle for the Guelph Storm. They're winning games that are pretty close, but they're low-scoring games. And they're winning those because of Braden Gillespie in net. He might be one of the best goaltenders in the Ontario Hockey League this season. So for Guelph, they are a threat in the Western Conference. If they can get Matthew Poitras and a healthy Cam Allen, that enough will probably help them in their run. But, for George Burnett, he's going to want to add. And he's done that in the past. We saw it when they did their last run, when they did the big trade with the Owen Sound Attack, bringing in Ryan Suzuki and Sean Dursey. So this is a Guelph team that's been known to make splashes at the OHL trade deadline. And with the way things are shaping up, it's going to be an arms race in the Western Conference. And, it's good if you're a seller because you know that, the price for those players is going to go up with these teams trying to outbid one another. So that's Kitchener, Sault Ste. Marie, Saginaw, London, and Guelph, all in the West. Expect them all to add at some capacity. I don't think Kitchener will be adding the big names, but the other 4, I think, might be a little more likely, especially Guelph. Goal scoring is probably something that they'll be looking to address. Then 6th overall, our first team from the Eastern Conference, it's the Ottawa 67s with 38 points. Luca Pinelli, he leads the team with 33 points. He's been having a great season. Cooper Foster, he's second with 29 points, and right now he is suspended 6 games for a hit to the head on Angus McDonnell in the game Sunday against the Mississauga Steelheads. So that's going to hurt Ottawa offensively to start the second half of the season. And then you have Henry Muse, third with 26 points. Muse, of course, a defenseman who's projected to go first round at the NHL draft. And for the Ottawa 67s, their lead right now in the East is pretty slim. The parity is real when it comes to the Eastern Conference. It's wide open. No team is really taking a charge in the Eastern Conference. And for Ottawa, they had a great run last season, and I don't see why not. They could add a piece. They've got 2 great goaltenders as well with Colin McKenzie and Max Donoso. Do they move one of those goaltenders, or do they stick with it? Because this is an Ottawa team that I think could have a deep run in the Eastern Conference, depending, though, what do some of the other teams do in the East? And we'll get to that in a few minutes. Coming in number 7, the Mississauga Steelheads. They have 38 points as well, tied with Ottawa. Luke Misa, he's first in points with 47. He's been a lot of fun to watch with the Steelheads. Porter Martone, second with 42 points. And then Angus McDonnell, third with 31. Not sure about his health status after that hit from Cooper Foster. But this is a Steelheads team that is ahead of the curve. Not many people were expecting them to be holding the top spot in the Central Division at this point in the regular season. Next year is really Mississauga's year. So right now they're kind of playing with house money. They're the most penalized team in the OHL as well. So this is a fun team. They're gritty. And I don't think Mississauga is going to be a team looking to add at the OHL trade deadline. Maybe some depth players, maybe to maybe recoup a couple of picks or whatnot. But this is a Mississauga team that I think has a good nucleus, a good core, and James Richmond probably doesn't want to mess with it too much, because last year at the trade deadline they traded Luca Del Bel Belouz to Sarnia, and that was a huge pickup. And that's the thing. When you can make a big splash at the trade deadline, you could add a big name player and go for a run, like say Sarnia did last year, or you can get these young talents and then reap the benefits in the following season. And right now, that's what Mississauga is doing. So I would not be surprised if Mississauga is a little quiet when it comes to the OHL trade deadline, but you never know. They might add some depth or some veteran leadership. Coming in number 8, the Brantford Bulldogs, 37 points, 1 point back of Ottawa. The Brantford Bulldogs, led by Nick Lardis. He has 37 points on the season. Then you have Patrick Thomas with 33 and Merrick Van Acker, 29 points. This is a Bulldogs team that's pretty young as well, but I think for Brantford, they're going to go as far as Nick Lardis is going to carry them. The play of Nick Lardis has been amazing. He's got an amazing shot. He's lethal on the power play. And he's just a fast player too. And then when you've got that small ice surface at the Brantford and District Civic Center, playoff hockey there for the visiting team is going to be a nightmare. And I think Brantford can really capitalize on that. I wouldn't be surprised to see Brantford taking top spot in the East Division. I think they are that good. We saw them in the playoffs last year, and the Barrie Colts played them, and they're a very feisty team, very aggressive. And I just like what this Bulldogs team has throughout the lineup. So watch out for Brantford. They might add maybe a depth player at the OHL trade deadline. We'll have to wait and see. The pickup of Thomas Hamara was great, getting him from the Kitchener Rangers. So I really like Brantford, and I haven't even talked about Max for Droback, the goaltender. He's been solid as well for Brantford. Number 9, the team that is surprising everybody with where they are right now. They're middle of the pack. It's the Sudbury Wolves, number 9, 36 points. David Guyette, first with 48. Then you have Quentin Musty. He has 38 points. And then Dalibor Dvorsky, 34 points in just 20 games. He is the real deal. The Sudbury Wolves, though, they were picked to be the team to come out of the Eastern Conference. They have the assets to trade and to go big. Expect Sudbury, I think, to be the biggest buyer in the Eastern Conference. They're going to go all in, and they have the talent. They've got the offense. They do have a big blue line, and goaltending, I know that's been a bit of a question mark. They brought in Marcus Vandenberg from Niagara, and we'll have to wait and see how this all comes together. It just seems as though discipline can be an issue for Sudbury, and the systems or the chemistry, just something's off and not clicking, and hopefully they can figure that out in the second half of the regular season, because all the pieces are there. They have what it takes, I believe, on paper to win the Eastern Conference, but it comes down to what's happening on the ice. And, if Saginaw does win the Western Conference, that's a free path for any team from the East who goes to the championship to appear at the Memorial Cup. And I know a lot of teams in the East thinking about that opportunity, but when you've got so much firepower in the West, this could be one of the more exciting runs towards the playoffs. 10th right now in the OHL, the North Bay Battalion. They have 35 points on the season. Anthony Romani, he has been something else. First with 51 points. Dalen Wakely also 40 points for second. And then Owen Van Steensel, 35 points. And it's hard with North Bay because we're so used to the Battalion being a defense-first team with Stan Butler behind the bench. But since Stan Butler has moved on and we've got Ryan Ullahan, this team is now more of an offensive-minded team. They are a big team with a solid goaltender with Dom DiVincentis and then Ty Nelson on the blue line. He's probably one of the better defensemen in the Ontario Hockey League. I think for North Bay, it sounds like from what I'm hearing, they're not going to be selling off any other big pieces unless they get an offer they can't refuse. And you have to figure it's going to be coming from a team like Saginaw, maybe Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury. Will they do a trade with their Northern Ontario rivals? But I think for the North Bay Battalion, they're going to maybe tinker with the lineup a bit unless a team gives them something they can't refuse. And I think North Bay, one of the more fascinating teams to watch, because after this season, we might see this North Bay team take a step back. So if you do sell off some of your big pieces, you get those draft picks, that'll help with the cycle for junior hockey with North Bay, and the Battalion could look to the future. But right now, this is a good team. They could go on a run like we saw last year when they went to the Western Conference Final. I think they have the pieces, but it all depends, I think, on what's offered for the pieces that they have right now in that lineup. 11th right now in the OHL, the Owen Sound Attack with 33 points. Denny Gore, he is so fun to watch. 38 points, leads the team. And then Cedric Guindon and Sam Sedley, they are tied for second in points with 34. The Owen Sound Attack, a very streaky team. I think this is a team that could be a bit of a dark horse in the West. If they can get it together, get healthy, Colby Barlow still waiting to find out when he'll be back on the ice. And they got Carter George. He's one of my favorite goaltenders right now in the Ontario Hockey League. And when they are on their game, they are almost unstoppable. And when you're playing at the Bayshore, it's one of the best arenas for home ice advantage for them. And I think for the attack, they might look to add on their blue line. Sam Sedley can't do it all himself, so they might add maybe there on the back end. Already, Dale DeGray, the GM of the Owen Sound Attack, said he's not selling this year. So this roster is either going to be what it is going to the playoffs, or they're going to add someone on the blue line. Might not be a big name like from we talked about with the other teams, but I think for Owen Sound, they're going to probably look to add a piece or two, just maybe some depth. Number 12, the Oshawa Generals, 32 points. They have been one of the hottest teams these last 2 weeks. Matthew Buckley, Rasmus Kumpalainen, and Dylan Robrick, they all share the lead in points with 27. Oshawa has been an interesting team. They've had a lot of injuries to start the season. Callum Ritchie didn't join the team until the start of November. And I think for the Generals, it's taken a bit for them to figure it out and coming together. And I love the pickup of Connor Lockhart from the Peterborough Petes. He's got that championship experience from last season. I think Oshawa and Brantford, those are probably the two teams to watch in the East Division. And I think it's going to be Ottawa, Brantford, Oshawa. They're going to fight it out in that East. And it's all going to come down to what do they pick up. Oshawa might look to add. I think for this lineup, it's still pretty young. And maybe they look to add next year. Maybe next year is their year, kind of like Mississauga. You also got a player like Beckett Seneca, who's a draft eligible this summer. He's probably going to go first or second round at the NHL draft. So I really like the lineup here for the Oshawa Generals, and we'll see if they can continue this good run. 13th, the Peterborough Petes, 32 points on the season at the halfway mark. Jacques Dubois first with 31 points, and then you have Owen Beck and Jonathan Malee tied for second with 30 points. The Peterborough Petes are a team that everyone is expecting to sell off. At the start of the year, this team was leading the division. It looked like they were going to continue that momentum from their championship run last year. But now I think they've kind of come back down to reality. I don't want to say that the Vultures are circling around Owen Sound. I want to say that it's the teams that are looking to enhance their team and siphon it from the championship experience. And for Peterborough, they don't have a lot of draft picks. So that's why I think for Peterborough, they're going to look to sell off their veteran players, their experienced players for draft picks and younger talent, so then they can get back into the cycle. And maybe in like 2-3 years, we'll see the Petes as a competitive team again in the East Division. But it was impressive what Peterborough was able to do to start the regular season. At the quarter mark, we were talking about how Peterborough was leading the East Division, and they might want to stand pat. But now that we've seen another quarter, we're halfway. I think now is a sign that the Petes are probably got the for sale sign on a lot of their talent, and I think they might be the busiest team heading up to the OHL trade deadline. That's how it appears right now, at least. Number 14, we've got the Erie Otters, 32 points on the season. Kerry Torrance leads the team with 34 points. I love the play of Torrance. And then you have Pano Femus. He has 33 points on the season, one of the best face-off guys in the OHL. And Malcolm Spence, he has 30 points on the season. This Erie Otters team, they want to snap that playoff drought. They have not been to the playoffs since their run to the championship in 2017. And I did an interview with Sean Bennard early in the season talking about this team going into it and how this team, their motivation is to make the postseason. I do not expect to sell off with this Erie Otters team. They're probably going to stand pat. That's my prediction. And for them, next year is their go. They want to go all in next year, just like Mississauga. And, for the Otters, I think they're looking good to snap that playoff drought. They are a bit of an underdog. I would not be surprised if teams take them lightly at times and they can take advantage of it. But I do like what this Erie Otters team is doing, and they're going to be a real force, I believe, next season. 15th, we've got the Kingston Frontenacs, 31 points on the season. Paul Ludwinski leading the team with 32 points. And then you have Chris Thibodeau. He has 30 points, and Jacob Battaglia, 28. They did the coaching change. Luca Caputi sent out. In comes Troy Mann. They picked up Roman Schmidt from the Kitchener Rangers. And I think that's a sign that Kingston, they see a vulnerability in the Eastern Conference. The conference is wide open, and it seems as though Kingston's going to be one of those teams that could be buying Maybe not to the same level as the Sudbury Wolves or the Powers in the Western Conference, but look for Kingston to maybe add to their lineup. I I think right now they're at the bottom of the conference, and it seems like, well, why would you want to do that? We saw that last year with Kitchener. Remember, they were outside the playoff picture, I believe, at the OHL trade deadline last year, and they kept adding because they thought last year was their year. And I feel Kingston might be in a similar situation, and they probably will look to add heading up to the OHL trade deadline. At 16, we have the Flint Firebirds. They have 29 points on the season. Gavin Hayes leads the team with points, 36. Braden Kressler, second with 35. And then Zachary Giroux, 34 points on the season for third. This team is struggling. 6 losses in a row right now, sitting 8th in the West. This is a team I think that might be looking to the future. Don't be surprised if they sell off some of their veteran players and just look to the future. Unfortunately, that's just the cycle of hockey, or for junior hockey at least. These teams get into a funk, and you sell off, you recoup the assets, and you plan ahead to next season. And I feel like that's where the Flint Firebirds are. Number 17, the Sarnia Sting, 25 points. Jacob LeBlanc first with 33 points. Then you have Sandis Vilmanis and Marco Sikic. They're both tied in points with 28. And Sarnia, another team, they had that great run last year. They went all in at the OHL trade deadline, and now this is kind of what happens the following year. So they're going to want to recoup some picks, get younger, expect some of the older talent to find new homes, I think, at the OHL trade deadline. Sarnia is another team that could look to unload, but they're still in the thick of it for maybe a playoff spot. At number 18, it's the Barrie Colts. They have 25 points on the season. Bo Jelzma leading the way with 30 points. Then you got Connor Punnett, 27 points, and Cole Baudouin. He is third with 27. Baudouin has had an amazing season, a great bounce back from last year. For the Barrie Colts, a lot of disappointment. Injuries have been huge for this team. Losing Bo Akey for the entire season. Jacob Frasca has been hurt for the last month. He should be back after the Christmas break. But for the Barrie Colts, and it seems like for them, it might be next year. That's what they're going to look to. So don't be surprised if they make a few moves to sell off, to get some draft picks back, maybe get some younger talent. But for the Barrie Colts, they're still competing for a playoff spot. They will make that push, but don't be surprised if they have to make a few moves looking towards the future. At number 19, it's the Windsor Spitfires. 21 points on the season. Liam Greentree, he has been something else. He's got 40 points on the season. Oliver Peer, 39 points, right there with Greentree. And then it's a big drop-off. You got Valentine Jugan, Jacob Millette. They're tied for third with 23 points. The Windsor Spitfires, they've been playing better since the coaching change with Jared Smith being let go. But, man, it's been such a frustrating year for Windsor Spitfire fans. After last year with being swept in the first round by Kitchener in historic fashion, it just seems like this team is just right now in mud. They're just spinning their tires right now, and it's really too bad because Windsor, they have such a great fan base, and I think they were expecting to maybe make the playoffs this year, but it happens. All the teams tend to go through this where you have those up years where you're really good, and then the down years, and this is one of those down years. But Liam Greentree, he'll be around next year, and he should have another big season. Expect him to be drafted in the first round in the NHL draft this summer. Yeah, there's going to be some movement, I think, with the Windsor Spitfires. They're going to look to sell a few other older pieces at the OHL trade deadline. And coming in at number 20, also at 21 points, the Niagara Ice Dogs. And for Niagara, it's another down year for them. Kevin He leads the team in points with just 24. Then you have Gavin Bryant. He has 21 points. And then Zachary Lavoie with 20. Niagara, it's such a mystery with this team. Just with how many trades they've done, it just feels like this team's just not able to develop sort of chemistry. Or when they get chemistry, then there's another trade. So I want to see Niagara do better. But with the way this team's going, you got to figure they're going to be selling off. Teams are going to be looking to pick up some of the talent on this Niagara Ice Dogs team, which is really too bad. The fans in St. Catharines, they deserve a winner. And it's hard when the Ice Dogs haven't been a playoff contender for quite some time. So it's another down year for them. But they have picked up wins in their last few games. Maybe they can challenge for a playoff spot. They're not far back of Barrie right now in the Eastern Conference standings. So I don't think the Ice Dogs will finish dead last in the OHL this season, but for the OHL trade deadline, expect them to make a few more moves, which, well, let's be honest, it wouldn't be a season without more trades from the Niagara Ice Dogs. So that's the recap as we've reached the halfway point of the OHL regular season. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on the season so far. What do you think are going to be some moves that we could see at the OHL trade deadline? And what are your thoughts on your favorite team? Love to see the comments down below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.